You are listening to the 2 and Out CFL podcast, a proud member of the Canadian Football Podcast Network.
Travis Currah and Sheldon Jones. I had to relearn how to work all of this stuff again, Sheldon, but it's good to see your face, my man.
It's great to see your face too. It's been a minute. Sorry, fam.
Yeah, we don't have to be sorry. There's a lot of life kind of kicking us where the sun doesn't shine right now. Thankfully, it's happening during the off season. Because if it happened during the season, I would be taking some illicit drugs just to stay awake. So
let's do it. Sounds fun.
Anyway, let's do it anyway.
Yeah. Let's just do it anyway. Yeah.
But we're here because training camp is basically here in a couple weeks. Mother's Day weekend, everything starts to get underway. The draft is here. So on the show today, JC Abbott of 3downnation.com joining the show. And this podcast is providing a nice little distraction on election night. I don't think I've been on Facebook today, and I don't know if I want to be on there, buddy.
I was. I made a little status saying, vote or don't complain, and then, as Facebook does, I quickly deleted it after there was some comments.
It went that bad?
I wouldn't say that bad. Just somebody decided to take it in a different political direction, and I just wasn't here for that. So,
well, I hope you have screenshots. I'd like to read that.
I do. Don't worry. You'll get the information. Don't worry.
I guess if we're updating on life, I'm talking to a surgeon on Wednesday, so we'll see what happens for me. I have a completely torn meniscus in my knee that I've been dealing with since September. Grey Cup in Vancouver was a bit miserable for me. Everybody on the show thinks I'm the happiest person on earth. My wife thinks I'm the grumpiest person on earth. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle. I'm neither the grumpiest nor the happiest, but my knee is not happy. But we're here. We're gonna get it done. We'll figure it out. The R word did come into my mind. Just briefly. I don't know. I feel like I'm at the point, Stanley Bryant, where he signs a 1-year contract, and then after the Grey Cup, another loss, he's like, well, let's go get another one, or try to get another one. And I don't know what the end goal is for me here, but I guess if we're going to do a draft show, I might as well do the whole darn season, Sheldon.
Yeah, I'm not ready to take this over, so you don't get to retire. So I'll shut that down right now. This is my therapy, man. I need this.
You need this? Okay.
I need this. Yeah.
I don't get paid enough for that.
Well, speaking of that, we're looking for sponsors for the show. If you want to sponsor us, or if you know anyone who's looking to spend some money sponsoring, shoot us our way.
Or support the show on Patreon. That does help. The VIPs of 2 and Out Nation on there, they cover the hosting costs and we are forever in your debt. So thanks so much for covering and helping us out with the show, and it keeps it going for another year. You can go to 2andout.ca, find the link to our Patreon up there, and the merch shop there as well. I'm rocking my I feel like a bit of a mark wearing my own name on my shirt, but
it's all right. I'm wearing a CM Punk shirt on a football podcast, so, and I haven't even got anything from our own store yet, so I should probably do that. It's the whole reason I made the store.
Some football news. This was just today. Alexander Hollins signing a 1-year deal with the Edmonton Elks. Now, what happened here is that he got released before he was due a $75,000 bonus in January, but he was injured. So he filed a grievance with the CFLPA. He won that grievance, so the BC Lions had to pay him that $75,000. It is going to be on their cap as dead money while he plays for the Edmonton Elks. But that is, I think, a pretty good signing for the Elks. Hollins did start the season last year with Vernon Adams Jr. on fire for the BC Lions. Cooled off as the season went on, but still, he is a deep threat in this game. If the Elks can take advantage of that and get him that ball, he can do more good things in the West Division.
Oh, for sure. And the Elks already had arguably one of the best free agencies, one would say on paper. So getting to sign a guy like Alexander Hollins, and most likely at a discount, because as you said, he's already got that $75,000 in his pocket. That's nothing but good for the Elks. Hopefully, they've been looking for that deep target. They had Eugene Lewis and all that, but like they're looking to score a lot more touchdowns this year and make those fans, excited to be back at Commonwealth. So I'm hoping that's happening.
Now, let's get to JC Abbott. For guys like him, this is the super. I can't.
Again.
This is the Grey Cup of the offseason, JC, isn't it?
It certainly is. It certainly is. I liken it more to Christmas, but definitely it's the culmination of a lot of months of hard work and research and analysis. And I don't get my hands dirty nearly as much as the scouts themselves do and how deep they are in the process, but even just the cursory investigations, watching a game or two on as many guys as I can, it's a massive, massive undertaking to get the breadth of knowledge required to talk about all these prospects.
Yeah, and what I find fascinating about the CFL draft itself, it feels like, a lot of the guys that get taken in the NFL draft, all that film is sort of readily available. A lot of these guys in the CFL, you kind of got to dig deep. And even some of the Canadian guys playing in NCAA, they don't really get sometimes a lot of snaps. And they're kind of just going in blind, it seems like, or at least they're digging really deep.
Yeah, there's a lot more projection involved in terms of both comparing levels of competition and also levels of involvement, as you indicated, right? You'll have a kid who is, a rotational player at LSU, for example, like Paris Shand this year, versus a kid who's a stud at the U Sports level at Montreal, like Jeremiah Ojo. And it's like, okay, how do we judge these two guys against each other? Certainly from a production standpoint, Ojo is off the charts, but this guy's playing in the SEC. He's got good measurables. What can we do with him? It's a really, really difficult process to navigate.
Man, that is a tricky balancing act. Like, do you go for the guy that's getting more, game action in U Sports, or do you look at, the quality of the conference he's playing in the States? Like, personally, what would you do? You feel like the guys playing Canadian ball, high level U Sports, they maybe have a leg up right off the bat?
It goes situation by situation, and I've been wrong plenty. Don't get me wrong, because I've taken my swings. I've made strong stands on certain prospects and turned out to be wrong. I've really liked certain guys and turned out to be wrong as well. But I tend to lean more to the guys who have done it. And I think there's a lot of value to players coming out of U Sports school that know the Canadian game, have a high level of production, are a pure fit to what it's going to take at this level on this field with 3 downs. Whereas some of the guys playing south of the border, they take some time to get up to speed. And I think you see it at the receiver position, for example. You've seen it a ton where a lot of these American NCAA guys get drafted really highly. You think of the Cole Tuckers, you think of, Nick Mardner last year, you think of even a guy like Justin McInnes, who's clearly had all the talent, but it took him 3 or 4 years to get to the stage where he was comfortable with the Canadian game, versus somebody like the Philpotts, who basically, they've struggled with injuries at time, but once they stepped on the field, it was instant. They knew how to do it, even though their measurables weren't necessarily the same as some of those guys who played at big time schools south of the border.
Before we really sink our teeth into the draft, the 15th commissioner of the Canadian Football League was officially introduced less than a week ago. Stewart Johnston stood in front of the press and took questions from his former colleagues, which is kind of an interesting situation for the commission to be in. But a longtime executive at Bell Media, man, he seems well-spoken, clearly a fan and passionate about the game. And sounds like he wants to get things rolling on the content side. Certainly understands the television side of the game, obviously. And I do wonder what's that going to shape the next TV deal for the CFL? Is it 2 years left on the current one? Am I right on that?
It expires after 2026, yes.
Okay, so early indications. What are your thoughts on this hire by the CFL?
I thought it was a brilliant hire by the CFL. You really couldn't have gotten a better option for where the league is now and where their priorities are in terms of that broadcast deal and the future of new media than Stewart Johnston, who is incredibly poised, I thought. And he just projected an aura of competence, right? And I think Randy Ambrosie at times is unfairly maligned for some of the things that happened during his tenure as commissioner. Some of that was outside of his control. I think as we get further away from it, we will maybe look back on him a little bit more fondly. But even with that grace given to him, you have to say that his biggest downfall was he could never control the narrative, right? He was always out there in front of the media, bumbling and stumbling, making promises that the league couldn't cash in terms of doubling league revenue and bringing in the next Yao Ming and all these, notable sound bites and quotes that have hung over him like a cloud over the last number of years. Stewart Johnston doesn't seem like the type of guy who's going to do that. He's going to lay base level expectations. He's not going to make any promises. He's going to do things the right way and grow the league that he is intimately familiar with. I thought there was a lot of signs for optimism in that first press conference, and I'm very high on this hire.
So before we move on, let's talk about Ambrosie a little bit. What is his legacy here? We talked about some of the things. I know it was right in the middle of his tenure, a pandemic rolled around, and that got rid of, probably the 10th team in Atlantic Canada. Although some, I think, were already skeptical on that anyway, without the pandemic. But what do you think his legacy is? You did mention that maybe we're going to look back on his time a little bit more fondly as time goes on.
It's so tough to judge it in this moment because the pandemic affected everything, right? Like, I think there was real momentum towards a team in Halifax right up until the time that happened, and you just couldn't regain it. And you do have to give him credit, I think, for the way the pandemic was handled. He bumbled and stumbled his way through it, but the league survived the greatest crisis in its history, an unprecedented one. And if we look at where it is now compared to where it was entering that crisis, I think you'd say it's a more stable league right now than it was prior. That in and of itself is a pretty remarkable accomplishment. The problem is he just lost so much trust while going through it because of the way he handled some of those issues and went in different directions, challenged the rules, XFL merger, going in front of Parliament with the huge monetary ask. All of those things sort of tarnish it, but you have to give him some grace because it was ultimately an unprecedented situation. What we'll remember him for most in terms of the impact he had on the league is going to be ownership, though, right? Because we've got the best collective ownership group that we've ever had in the CFL, and Ambrosie put it together. Now, did he create some of the problems himself that they ultimately had to fix with the situation in Montreal, with Gary Stern, with, some of the things that happened in Edmonton towards their decline, that they had to replace the ownership, or they had to put in a private owner there. Yeah, of course. I think Ambrosie bears some responsibility for all of those things, but ultimately he found the right people, and he's got this incredible group of private owners across the board who seem to be invested long-term into this league, which is not really something we can ever say the CFL has had before.
So here we are, draft day, which means camp is only a few weeks away. I don't know where the off season went, although it felt like an eternity at times. The Calgary Stampeders have the first pick. I was digging back. Now, they had the first pick in 2014. Was that the Burris trade, maybe, when Ottawa gave it up to have him there? But they earned this first pick. They earned the first pick in 2005. So this kind of a unfamiliar position for the Stampeders to be in. Are they the team, or who's the team that's really looking to stock the Canadian cupboards going into this draft?
I think it is the Stampeders, and they're incredibly well positioned, to do so with all the picks that they've got at the top end of the draft, right? You have the first overall selection. You get 8th overall because of the BC Lions. You add another second rounder in there also because of the Lions. You're just loaded with top end talent spots to bring in guys. Now, it's not a earth-shattering draft at the top of it, I should say, but it's really, really thick in that middle. So once you get outside those sort of top 10 where you're like, I'm maybe reaching on these guys, that 20 through 30 is going to be really, really solid players compared to maybe some other years. And the Stampeders can feast on those types of players, and they need to, because they haven't been good enough in recent years. They haven't had enough quality Canadian depth, but they took strides last year with quality drafting when they had 2 first-round picks as well, with Ben LaBrosse and Christian Kanu, who both make instant impacts. And if they can replicate that again this year with their pick of the litter, I think it's really going to set them on a positive trajectory going forward.
So earlier on, you mentioned that you've taken some stabs at some mock drafts and had some swings and some misses, and I know you were in Regina for the Combine. So I was just kind of wondering, who are like maybe the top 3, 1, 2, or 3, doesn't matter, but players that you kind of saw at the Combine with your own eyes, who you think may have increased their stock as to where they were like previously on the board there.
Some of the guys who I think helped themselves a lot at the Combine, and these aren't necessarily guys who will go in the first round, but probably in rounds 2, 3, maybe even 4, but have elevated themselves. You got to talk about Arvin Hosseini, the offensive lineman from UBC. I think people were really concerned about his lack of length going into the Combine, and he just moved like butter, took quality reps at tackle, even though he doesn't have long arms, didn't really get beat at all in Regina. And I think he elevated himself up into that top tier of linemen. Seth Hundeby, the linebacker from Saskatchewan, we knew he was going to be a good athlete. I didn't think he was going to run 4.7 at 251 pounds. Unfortunately for him, or fortunately, he's going back to school to be an engineer. So he'll be a year away for teams. That probably drops him into the round 4 range, but he popped off in a way that I certainly didn't expect. And then even somebody like a Max von Muhldorfer, who, again, short arms, a little bit stubby as a defensive tackle, wasn't getting the same traction through the process as someone like Darian Newell out of Queens, who is just an absolutely tremendous player and athlete, but then comes into the Combine and tests even better than Newell did at the Buffalo Pro Day, just blows everyone out of the water, is bull strong because he's a junior Pan American weightlifting gold medalist, and then runs super, super quick. He really helped himself. So that's 3 guys there who I thought were real winners at the CFL Combine.
Okay, so now we talk about the winners. So how about a few players who maybe came in and you thought maybe might have hurt their draft stock when it comes to their performance in the combine?
There's a couple names that come to mind. There's some guys who just simply ran not fast enough for their size and measurables. Unfortunately, somebody like Harold Masson out of the Université de Montréal, the linebacker who won the President's Trophy as the top defensive player in U Sports in 2023. He's a bit of an undersized linebacker. Some people saw him as more of a safety convert, and then he runs really slow, really unexplosive. He projects really poorly from that standpoint to the CFL level. The same thing for Jahari Hastings, the DB from Wilfrid Laurier, who's undersized at 5'8", but hits like a truck, but then runs a 4'9" as an undersized DB. That's really hard to project for guys like that. But there's also the other element of the combine as well, where people are showing up in Regina. You're interviewing all these players and you're trying to get a sense of them, whether they're embracing the moment, whether they're ready to come into the CFL and have the right attitude. And I think somebody like an Isaiah Bagna maybe didn't maximize his opportunities there. A big school guy from BYU, played at Boise State before that. Surprised a lot of people by agreeing to come to Regina in the first place. So there was high hopes that he was going to come and really relish this opportunity like some of the NCAA guys in the past, like Joel DeBlanco did last year, and really show out in that way. And then surprise teams by electing not to participate in the on-field portions. Wasn't clear about that up front like some of the other top prospects were. I think some people felt that he wasn't as engaged on the sideline like some of the other guys who were in street clothes, and that probably hurts him in the draft, especially since he didn't test particularly well either. It left teams with more questions about him than they had coming into it, and that's never a good thing. Not to say he's necessarily a bad kid, but maybe he got some bad advice on how to handle that particular situation.
I love the combine and the draft process, especially when we talk about the interviews with the different teams. Who do you think would be the most intimidating GM to go into that meeting room at this time?
There's some good candidates for intimidation, but it's tough to beat Ed Hervey, I think when he's sitting across from you. He's got a certain gravitas, a certain glare that he sometimes sends your direction as a member of the media, and he is not going to take any BS. Oftentimes you're asking these prospects questions that you already know the answer to, and they're trying to paint it in a good light. What's your weaknesses? And they paint it in a way that maybe it's actually a strength. He's not going to allow you to do that. He's going to call you out right there in the chair and make you give him a real answer. And that's going to make you sweat as a young man.
Yeah. So let's talk about the quarterback. So we know that Curtis Rourke got drafted in the 4th round of the NFL draft. So I guess first, what do you think that does with his draft here? Do you think teams are still willing to take like a gamble and a higher pick? And then talk about the other QBs that are eligible for the draft here.
Yeah, for Curtis Rourke, it's an interesting situation because I think if you told people halfway through this year that he was going to go in the 7th round, they would have said, oh, wow, he's going to be up there in the top 2 or 3 picks in the CFL draft, because that bodes really well for him to come up here earlier than maybe some people originally expected. But then the team that takes him is the San Francisco 49ers. And the San Francisco 49ers, have a system that is absolutely perfect for what he does in terms of getting the ball out of his hand quickly, RPOs, quick reads, everything that Rourke has done extremely well in college. That's what Kyle Shanahan, likes to do with those Niners. And then they have also had a tendency of always carrying 4 quarterbacks on the roster in some capacity. They've only got 4 now, so that basically guarantees Rourke a spot, and developing those guys long term because they like to have a bit of a pipeline. Plus the fact that their starter, Brock Purdy, was Mr. Irrelevant himself. So they're not afraid to stick a guy who's a late round pick in there and give him his opportunity if he earns it. I think now you're looking at multiple years of waiting on Rourke, given all those factors. That might drop him a little bit lower, but you're also weighing the fact that if he comes up, this is a potential difference-making starting quarterback, something we don't typically have in the CFL draft process. And so that's a different valuation entirely. I still think he'll probably go in the round 2 range. After that, I would bet that the only other quarterback drafted is Taylor Elgersma out of Wilfrid Laurier, who is also a potential starter in the CFL. I actually have him ranked just slightly ahead of Rourke because I got a chance to see him live, and maybe it's made me a little bit biased, but he has just an absolute cannon of an arm, a howitzer. And he's a guy who is more familiar with the CFL game right away. He's not going to have the same adjustment back to it like Curtis would have. And I think the ceiling physically is a little bit higher. Now, he's not as polished in terms of his ability to read a defense and all of those things he's going to have to develop. But I would just bet on the upside there. And I think he is, now that he didn't sign an NFL contract, which was shocking, and he could well do it after he attends the 2 mini camps that he's accepted, because there is real traction there and real interest, which would change the equation. If he doesn't, I think that makes him even more valuable in the CFL capacity and potentially bumps him up above Rourke. The other guys, Jonathan Senecal, Arnaud Desjardins, they're really good U Sports players. They've got some nice traits. I don't think they're at the level that you're going to want to draft them, but they're probably in a camp in some capacity as a non-counter getting that opportunity. They've got some really nice movement skills. Desjardins gets rid of the ball, reads the defense incredibly well. Senecal is a magician. They do some things well. They just don't necessarily have the same wow factor traits as a passer that somebody like Elgersma has.
Elgersma was in the Senior Bowl this winter, so I think that's why people thought, hey, maybe he could go late in the NFL draft, right? And so this kid, you see he's got starting CFL quarterback in his future for a lucky team in this great league?
I really believe he does. And I've heard from a number of GMs who have similar thoughts. It may not happen year 1, year 2, but I think at some point with his tools, from an arm strength standpoint, a lot of the guys who come up to the CFL are a little bit weaker armed. That's often the thing that maybe pushes them out of the NFL equation, is they don't have that talent. Elgersma has it. I would liken it a little bit to like a prime Bo Levi Mitchell. That was always his thing. When he first came up here, was his arm strength was different. He had a different velocity on the ball. I think Taylor is in that same category. And if you get him the right coaching in the right system, you mold that. He's only been playing the game at a high level, or the quarterback position, for about 6, maybe 7 years, which is really a short period of time for a QB. There's more to develop. And to me, with the physical tools, the sky is the limit.
I don't know what's happening in southern Alberta lately, but Adjo was, I think he spent time in Brooks. This year, the number 1 rated player is Alec Iomanner out of Medicine Hat. I don't know if it's that Alberta beef, but maybe we're not going to be seeing him in the CFL anytime soon, if ever. It's always tricky with the scouting bureau and how the number 1 ranking happens. He did go to Stanford. And last year, man, the Canadians were just dominating all over the field in the CFL. So for this draft class, are there budding stars that you could see making an impact in the next few years or pretty quickly here?
Absolutely. There are guys who I think can step in early in their careers and make that sort of an impact. The defensive line class is absolutely fantastic. Darian Newell, I think once he gets on the field, it's going to be impossible to take off of. He is just a ball of raw power and twitch, the likes of which we have rarely seen in U Sports. Jeremiah Ojo, I'm really high on. Off the edge, I think he can be somebody who fits into a Robbie Smith type of role. And of course, he just became the highest paid defensive player in the CFL.
Okay, we've said what we thought about that contract. What do you think about that contract?
I think it was a little bit of an overpay. Let's not get it wrong. But hey, if Ojo could get into a similar role, I mean, that could pay off for him as well. The DB class is fantastic. Jackson Finley might be a day one starter for a team at safety. He's a legacy player with everything you want, all the range. And then a couple of really good receiver prospects that I think could contribute early, right? Keelan White from Montana is just a gamer. And I think he is both a childhood friend of the Philpotts, but built in the same mold in terms of a guy who doesn't have huge size, isn't necessarily super fast, but is smooth and has great short area quickness to get open and just rose the occasion game after game after game for the Grizz, making ridiculous catches. He had 2 overtime game winners in the FCS playoffs for that Montana team in back-to-back weeks because they looked to him in those moments. I think he can step in early. And then Damian Alford, even though he didn't necessarily have the production last year, struggled to see the field at Utah, you're talking about a guy who's a legit 6'5", 224 pounds, and runs 4.46 running down the sideline. I mean, that is the same size, but thicker and faster than Nick Mardner was last year coming out. And he started for the Redblacks his entire rookie year. So you're looking at a hell of a projection there for Alford if he can pan out as a pro.
I love asking questions like this, especially people like you that dig deep into the CFL draft and the Canadian prospects out there. Is there a JC Abbott special that's going to go in round 7 or 8 that's going to grind out a great special teams career, or anywhere? Just some favorite obscure pick of yours that you're hoping gets drafted late and might turn out a nice CFL career.
I mean, there's lots of guys that I'm going to be pulling for late, but I'll highlight a guy that maybe will go a little bit earlier. I'm not sure where he'll ultimately fall because there are some outside concerns based on the fact that he blew out his knee last year in college and won't be healthy for training camp. But I will have, this is a little preview for you guys exclusively when our top 25 drops tomorrow morning, I will have Skylar Griffith, the fullback from UBC, at 25 on my ranking, which I don't think anybody knows who that kid is because he hasn't been healthy to go and test. But he had 38 career special teams tackles in 23 games for UBC, an all-Canadian cover man, was just sort of peaking as a tight end, had back-to-back 60-yard games before he blew out his knee last year, and is such a good mover for 245 pounds. I actually had the opportunity to time him at UBC's junior day a year ago after Theo Benedict and Giovanni Manu did all their work at BC Place. And he ran a 4.7 at that size on my stopwatch. So this guy is a freak with a ton of special teams production, and he's really the only true fullback tight end type in this draft that has that level of athleticism. To me, you take this kid regardless of the injury and you take him high.
I love this. JC Abbott of 3downnation.com is going to be live on YouTube with Ben Grant covering all the rounds of the CFL Draft on Draft Day. I will ask you one more about the global draft. Have you been covering that for this year as well? I know those picks they seem like they just come instantly these days, and I know the old joke is just the international punters, but what are you looking for from the global draft in this year?
Well, there's some good prospects available, a lot of good punters, as you pointed out, as there always is. But I think you've got guys available if they come up here, and it's always a big if because of the NFL IPP program keeping those guys south of the border. But if some of these guys come up here, they can make an instant impact. And I think the one for sure that you can guarantee is going to be up here because he's already gone through the NFL rigmarole is Richard Jabunger, defensive end, outside linebacker from Troy. This is a kid who was a 4-star recruit to Auburn, spent a year there, actually contributed a little bit as a freshman, then ultimately transferred to Troy and was a 4-time consecutive all-conference selection there, racked up a ton of sacks as essentially just that CFL twinger outside edge rusher type. He's built for this game, grades out extremely highly if you look at the analytics from things like PFF, has all the production, has all the physical tools and measurables that you want. He was going to be in Regina for the CFL Combine. Unfortunately, there was a bit of a visa issue. I was told that would be cleared up in time for training camp. So I expect a team's going to draft him in that first round, and he could be one of the first real starting caliber globals in this league, in my estimation. If he was an American, I would look at bringing him in as an American pass rusher just to have that global advantage, if you will be huge for him as well. So I'm very high on Richard Jabunger.
Awesome. JC, thanks for coming on the show and giving us your insight. And we're looking forward to the broadcast tomorrow online. Thanks for all the work you do, and we'll talk to you soon.
It was a pleasure, guys. Thanks.
Thanks again to JC Abbott of 3downnation.com. He's going to have a mammoth broadcast on YouTube tomorrow. Draft day with Ben Grant. They're going to be covering every pick. I did watch them last year. Great analysis. Lots of homework done on these players in the CFL draft, and we are forever in their debt for all of that. It probably seems like thankless words sometimes, but on behalf of CFL fans, I certainly appreciate it.
Well, me too. It was great talking with JC and getting so hyped. I'm going to the Riders post-draft party.
They're doing a post-draft.
It's post-draft, so because they moved up the draft because of the playoffs, so it's at 4.
Playoffs?
So we're going to go there after the 2 rounds have been televised on TSN and just hang out and, just get to see our CFL family and our Rider fans, and it just makes football that much closer. I just can't wait to walk up to Mosaic again. Only a month or so, and then we'll be walking up for real.
And cheer for the Los Angeles Kings to take a 3-2 series.
For sure. For sure.
Yeah, dude, I buried the lead again. This is episode 501. Of the show. The last show, I didn't realize it till it was done. I labeled it. Oh my gosh. 500 episodes of this show. And I think, if I think back, I think maybe I've been on 494, 495, something like that.
I've done 2 by myself.
Okay, so there's 498. This is a deep cut. Clayton, there are some Clayton Croker, John Fraser episodes out there. They maybe did 2.
So that means I'm like the 4th best one? Jeez. 5th. I guess Joe was on here too, right? So 5th.
So maybe I've done 496, 497. Holy crap. No wonder I think about retirement. But
it's
it
okay.
doesn't-
That was your first career.
Okay.
Now go play some baseball and let's come back in a couple of years.
If there was a defined benefit pension or something, I'd be out, but there isn't, unfortunately. If I could just stop the show and then hopefully the they just forget that they're signed up to my Patreon. I would never do that. Never do that. Did I say that out loud? Well, Sheldon Jones, it's good to see your face again. Thanks for doing another show here as we get ready for another season of CFL football. The grass is getting greener, the trees are starting to bud, and that means football is right around the corner. It's finally here, man. So I am so excited. He's Sheldon Jones. I'm Travis Currah. You can rate, review, and subscribe to Two and Out on your favorite podcatcher and on YouTube. We will recap the CFL Draft very, very soon. In the meantime, take care of yourself and each other.
Thanks for listening. Find more great shows like this at CF Pod Network on Twitter.